son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
All right, folks, welcome back. It is once again the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. I'm your host, James Oliva. Please, if you like the content, like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and I really appreciate it. Got a lot of people who are viewing but not subscribing. Doesn't cost you anything. Just click the button. Not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Today, we have a returning guest to talk about something completely unrelated to both of our previous other podcasts. You will recognize Preston as the pilot of the famed trip that flew through the eclipse. Please welcome back to the show, good friend and awesome dude who lives a crazy life that is never boring, Preston Van Loon.
I am so happy to be back, dude. This is always a great time.
Well, we've been talking about this one for a minute, and again, this one is like a pretty hard divergence from the other times you've been on the pod, but it has to be discussed because, as you and I talked about a bunch before you were going into this, very few people have a chance to do what you did here. And I think it'll probably be smart for those who have completely no background or have not watched the other episodes. Just give yourself like a quick intro, what you do, and then we'll get into how you found yourself where you found yourself.
Yeah, it's a good question. What do I do? Well, I do a lot of things. My role is primarily working on a protocol called Ethereum. It's a general purpose blockchain that people are deploying really interesting, financial applications that aren't really possible in traditional finance. My role is to be a core developer, so I'm actually working on that protocol itself, trying to make it faster, cheaper, easier to use, and add a bunch of cool things like privacy, which is kind of the theme of this podcast.
Yeah, so again, for people that don't understand what blockchain is, can you give the simple, rudimentary, idiot-proof description of what that is for people like me?
Yeah. Well, what we're trying to do is recreate something very similar to cash, money, online, right? This is the idea. And to make that money online, be able to have certain rules or properties about it, right? Saying like, this can only be spent a certain rate, or it could be borrowed or lent out to anybody. A lot of these things are probably familiar if you have a bank account, which you probably do. You have a savings on your account. They're paying you money because they're lending your money out, right? That's the savings. They're just kind of giving you a little bit of that. So the idea is, what if we could do this online and not have to ask anybody? You can create your own, you can, be your own bank. You can do whatever you want. Just like writing your own software. If you put the time into it, you can write your own software. It does whatever you want. Especially in this AI age, you can have an AI help you do whatever you want. So that's the idea. It's like to have this freedom. I would call it freedom to do whatever you want. So why use a blockchain, right? Why not just use something we have already? The idea behind using a blockchain is that it's distributed and decentralized, which what that means is it is everywhere and no one controls it, or everyone controls it. Everyone could be a participant, but nobody can, turn it off or on, or, change the rules without everyone agreeing that those are the new rules. And that's the only way to really achieve that freedom of saying, like, I want to make a financial application some money, do something very specific, and do it that way forever, and guarantee that it can never change. You have a bank account, you have a savings, they can change the rate, they can close your account for any reason. And it's not to say that that's like a real problem for you. It probably isn't. it is for many people. And just to know that there's an option out there where you have this dependence on like a third party, like a bank.
Yeah, I there's a lot of people that will get very upset about crypto and the idea of crypto, and I always kind of looked at least my understanding of blockchain as like, I never understood why it got lumped in with just completely criminal behavior. Like from the outset, I always think that the government would want an immutable ledger, especially if they can tie it back to an individual. That's what they want. It takes them like dozens of forensic accountants to do that through normal bank records, whereas the blockchain just kind of hands it to you. And again, like there's also the application of not necessarily using it as money, but using it just to store an immutable storage of data, any kind of data that you want to keep secured and encrypted in some way. So I never understood why people are so wary of it or terrified of it. I get that the big thing the government wants to do is always say it's going to be used for crime. Yes, of course it is. Money is used for crime too. Cash is also used for crime, has been forever. Don't look into the history of HSBC Bank or any bank for that matter. So I'm wondering if you could maybe just like talk a bit about how you thought it was a scam until you started actually digging in. And like your trajectory into crypto was completely fascinating. As somebody who's watching it on the outside, it went from 0 to 100 really fast. But can you kind of explain like the eureka moment for you when you were like, oh, this actually is a great idea and I want to be a part of building it?
Yeah. I used to think, well, at first I thought I was very like standoffish about this, right? Like it is a new technology and you kind of only hear these negative headlines about what people are able to do.
Silk Road. Yeah. The headlines. Yeah.
Yeah. And, those are still a small fraction of what actually happens on there. It's just for whatever reason amplified because it's new. Anyway, I heard about Bitcoin, which is like the first big cryptocurrency or blockchain. I heard about Bitcoin when it first went to like $1,000. And I was like, well, okay, people are talking about it, saying it's interesting. So I read the white paper, which is a document that just sort of explains what it's supposed to do and how it works. It's only like 10 pages. I don't know. It's not that long. So if you're interested, go read it because it's really easy to read and short. And one of the themes of Bitcoin is it's peer-to-peer money, right? I want to send you a donation directly for the show. I send it directly to you. It doesn't go through Venmo and then to your bank. I like peer-to-peer. We're transacting directly together. And also, it is supposed to be a store of value. These are the two key properties of Bitcoin. And when I saw it at around $1,000, I was studying it, and I think 2 days later, it was like $300. And I thought, well, that's not a very good store of value, is it? So it's kind of turned off. And I also was, still in college, so it's not like I wanted to spend my little money on something as speculative as that. And then also, it wasn't very good money, peer-to-peer money either. Because if I wanted to, let's say, buy my groceries at the store, right? And I don't want to use cash, but I want to use something equivalent to cash, right? Like a digital cash. And I could use my credit card or debit card, and that, goes to the internet, it, calls into their server and then asks them if you have a credit, and then it records that whole thing happens. And that takes 5 seconds, maybe. It's slow enough that you'll notice it's there, but not enough that like they're going to be done, checking out your groceries by the time you've done it. Bitcoin, the way it works is every block is built in sequence. So they're connected to each other like in a chain, hence the name blockchain. Each new block contains a list of everything that happened in the last 10 minutes. Every transaction that someone wanted to include on the blockchain, they paid a small fee to somebody to put it there. And everybody sees this new block that was created, goes out into the world, and that's the new state of the world. And the important part of that is that it takes 10 minutes. That's if you get into the block. The block might be full. It might be very busy. You may have to wait a couple blocks. You may have to pay a high fee because it's based on who is willing to pay the most to go into this block. It can be kind of like a toll road in congestion time. Sometimes those are very expensive. So that's a terrible way for real-time money. You go to pay for your groceries and you're standing there for 10, 20, 30 minutes. Your groceries are getting hot and warm.
Ice cream's melting. Yeah, exactly. It's not good.
You're melting down. So I was like, okay, I'm not convinced. I'm not going to invest in it. I think it's a bad idea. And then when I moved to New York, we were hanging out at that I remember it's like a really demonic Satanist bar. Do you remember what it was?
St. Vitus. Yep. R.I.P. St. Vitus.
Cool place. And you told me I should really look into it. And we didn't speak much about it from what I remember, but you said go look at it. And I was like, all right, well, I'll go check it out. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. I 100%. Well, and the reason I told you to do it is because I had a couple other friends who had already gotten pretty deep into it. But they could never distill to me what it is and what it's doing. And I was like, if anyone's going to understand this, it's going to be Preston. And if it is worth looking into, Preston will be able to quickly discern whether it's worth investing time or money in.
Yeah. So he told me, check out Ethereum. It's a general purpose platform. So not only could it be the same as Bitcoin and attempts to be a store of value and money, this time it's a little bit better at being money. It's faster. It's a lot cheaper to use. And then you can use that money to orchestrate and operate complex operations, like complex applications on the blockchain. So that gave it even if it was Bitcoin, just a recreation of Bitcoin that was faster and cheaper, it still had this other layer of being able to actually do something useful. And they had a lot of plans on the roadmap that seemed more sustainable. The big one being when a Bitcoin block is produced, they have this mechanism called proof of work. And what this does is it makes it very, very expensive to produce a block. There's a high-paying reward that comes with producing a block. But if you made block production really, really fast and really cheap, anyone would do it and it would just be absolute chaos. Everyone's shouting in the room at the same time. You're not going to be able to hear what is the state of the world. You need one person or a group of people competing to be that one person. And every 10 minutes, effectively one person is selected to produce a block. But the way they do this is they tell a computer, they say, I want you to come up with a bunch of random numbers, really big numbers, as fast as you can. And if that random number has enough zeros in it, then you've solved the puzzle and you get the reward. You get to produce that block. It's literally just wasting energy, like spinning a wheel until the right thing comes out. It works. It's very simple, but it's really, kind of wasteful in the sense that you spent kilowatt hours of energy. You spent a lot of energy to produce that block, and that could be used for something useful like powering your car or heating your house or something like that.
Literally anything else, yeah.
So what Ethereum did was they switched to a model called proof of stake. And what this did was we would select still one person every, in this case, 12 seconds, every 12 seconds to produce a block. And the way we did it was you had to put up a bond to become one of the people that is randomly selected to produce the block. It's no longer a competition for the block, who can make the numbers as fast as they can. It's just, if you're in this room, you have a number, and we're going to pick a random one, and it's verifiably random. Everyone sees it. Everyone agrees. I saw them pull the random number, and I got the same random number, and that ended up being Bob is the one producing the block. So instead of creating trillions or billions or whatever random numbers, they just pick one, and that's a lot more efficient in terms of energy. So these were things I thought, okay, well, if this is supposed to be a replacement for money online, it better be good. And I thought that was a good property about it, was switching from proof of work to proof of stake, and that it's faster and can, be programmed to do whatever you can imagine.
Yeah, so the real reason that this is super important context. Thank you for spelling that out. The reason that I'm trying to lay that context out is because this is ultimately how you find yourself involved in the most recent big crypto case, which unfortunately has set a very strange precedent for well beyond just crypto. The idea of digital privacy, and then even the idea of free speech, because of how it relates to code. But if you can just kind of explain, we're talking about the Tornado Cash trial. This was a huge trial, heavily publicized, and Preston was a part of it. Now, if you could kind of explain what Tornado Cash was, and I guess maybe when this came onto your radar, because you were well aware of it before you get called to be a witness.
Yeah, so we have a major problem with blockchains. It's a problem and also a feature. Whenever there's a transaction, let's say I'm buying my groceries, everyone in the world can see that I did that. I paid, $100 for groceries. Maybe they could see what I bought. Maybe they could see the time of day, the location, just a lot of information about that transaction that I don't really want associated with my identity,
Permanently, forever. Yeah.
Forever, right? Now, one key thing that we didn't mention is how blockchains represent, or people are represented on blockchains. It's just numbers, and you can create your own account or unlimited number of accounts, and the account is just a random, it's a public key. It's a random string of letters and numbers. If you didn't know that my random string of letters and numbers was 125 ACB, if you didn't know that was me, then you just wouldn't know who it was, because it's a meaningless number that I just made up just now. However, if you were the grocery store owner, perhaps you saw me do that, and you saw it happen, and suddenly you know everything I ever did. That I bought coffee yesterday. That I went to another grocery store that you don't like.
Oh God.
That I engaged in behavior you don't approve of. Whatever that may be, it can be anything to anybody. And now you don't let me in your store. I don't know. There's no online financial privacy in a blockchain like that. So what do we do? Because that's not really a desirable feature of the future of money, right? I don't want everyone to see what I do all the time or be able to. Now, it's not that this is a criminal behavior or criminal desire, right? The context of this is there's a criminal trial that we're about to discuss, and that a lot of the headlines for blockchain are criminal activity. You hear people stealing money, doing whatever it is, and facilitating over blockchain. It doesn't mean that all activity, or even most of the activity, is criminal. So we need a solution for this, and these guys at a hackathon, and a hackathon being like a coding contest that you show up with an idea and a blank project, and you build it from start to finish and present it on like the third day. You stay up all night, you know, working on it, you grind through it, and whatever you have.
Is DEF CON a hackathon kind of deal?
DEF CON is the security conference. I don't know if it's if they have the kind of coding element to it. There's the Ethereum DevCon with a V. That's also like a conference about crypto, mostly Ethereum related stuff. And there are often some like side things where people will do a hackathon. This one in particular was
like a committed hackathon. The entire event is about this. Gotcha.
Yeah. So this one that we're speaking about is it's put on by a group called ETH Global, and their idea is they do these hackathons all over the world, and people could come listen to people speak about the projects, learn something new, build something, meet people. There are a lot of people who come to these hackathons and then they win sponsorships, so they actually can take their idea to a reality. They get funding, whatever it may be, or they win prizes at the very least, or they just get free food. Pretty much everything is there for free. It's paid by sponsors, so as an attendee, it's really fun. This one was in Boston. It was actually at Harvard University for ETH Boston. I think it was 2019. I was there. I was speaking about proof of stake. This was working at the time. And one of the groups of people there that were working on project was a project called Tornado Cash. And their idea was, we want to create online financial privacy for anyone and everyone, and to make it in a way that's secure. You can't be hacked. You can't have the rules changed out from under you. They wanted it to be immutable. No one controls it, and it's a tool for anyone to use. So they came up with this idea of Tornado Cash, and the idea behind it is you can make a deposit into this pool of funds, or maybe a better way to think of it is you can put a cookie in the cookie jar, and then you get a receipt, and the receipt just says, I put a cookie in the cookie jar. Now, someone goes and they can shake it up, or more people put their cookies in, whatever. Then you come back and you say, I want my cookie back. Then you go in there and reach and you grab one. It may not be the same one. In fact, it probably isn't the same one. But you were able to, take, if one person, maybe you traded that receipt to somebody else and someone else picked it up. And then in that way, there's no connection between the person that put it in and the person that took it out.
Gotcha.
There's a privacy part to it. How that translates on a blockchain is you use your well-known account, people that associate, or an account that you're associated with. You make a deposit into this pool. Say, I'm going to put $1 in there. And then sometime later, you take the receipt from a new account and you say, hey, I have this receipt that says I put $1 in. I'd like to have it back now. And you pull it out, and you don't, there's no rules or anything with that. Like, that's the rule, is if you have a valid receipt that hasn't been used yet, you have a claim
it. Yeah.
to one item in this pool. All the items are the same. It's all dollars, or maybe $5 bills. They don't have numbers on them or anything. They're all just credit of $5. So you can go and claim that at any time.
Yeah, so that's effectively what Tornado Cash does. That was the idea behind it. Now, what is like the first? Obviously, the government hates that even more than they hate base level crypto, because they want to know everything. In their eyes, there is no right to privacy. It's for sure been that way since the early 2000s. Patriot Act was like a huge revelation into what they really thought about us having privacy. could you kind of explain at what point does this start to become a problem for Tornado Cash? Like they say they're going to do this thing. They're going to have this open source software free for anyone to use. At what point do they start getting pushback from the powers that be?
Yeah. So they won a category of that coding contest. They won something. I don't know what it was. I don't remember. Some prize. Probably money. I don't know how much. But they won it, and then from there they decided, well, let's take it and to finish it, make it a real thing. Yeah. You know, make it a real thing, because there's a lot to it. It's not easy to create this thing, right? So, and to create it in a way that there's no trust involved, right? You can't be hacked. What's scary is about this stuff is that if you have the keys to control it, you can still change any part of it. And if the way this works in detail is that there's some math behind it, right? You have to create the randomness. You have to make it. It's this technique called zero knowledge cryptography. Basically, you have to implement this cryptography such that I can convince you of a fact without revealing what it is. I can tell you mathematically, I did put something in there. I did make a deposit. But I don't have to tell you exactly which one.
Yeah.
That's very challenging to do. And they did it, right? But part of that was that they needed a trusted setup, right? Because you have to encrypt the data for a particular, it's called a solver, I think. You have to create it for this particular solver or circuit, and you don't really want someone else to be the one to set it up, because you don't really trust them that didn't retain a copy of that key, or like have a copy of the key somehow. So what they did is they crowdsourced the randomness behind it. And they said, like, everybody pick a random number and then hash it. You're familiar with hashes, where you put a number in and then some junk comes out the other side, like meat in a meat grinder. It's always reproducible, but you won't be able to go the reverse way. So everybody does that. They tell everyone what their hashes were, and then when they're done, everyone can then reveal their number, and those numbers are all like added together, and that's the randomness that creates it. So they committed to that. It's called a trusted setup ceremony. So when they first deployed Tornado Cash, they did have control over it with these call them admin keys. Usually just to set things up,
Sure.
You know, test things out. Like, oops, I deployed this component or configured it incorrectly. We can still switch it. So they can change out pieces until they've got it working to the way they want. And then they're going to revoke their own access, so then nobody controls it. That gets that property of decentralization, where no one at all controls it. No one can change the rules. It's immutable. So when you put your money in there, you know exactly what's going to happen. You know exactly how it works, and it will never change. And it can never be turned off, and it can never be stopped. That's a really, really cool thing to do, which I would agree with you. I think the government does not like that. I think I think they very much preferred it the way it was before.
Yeah.
Where once they associate you with this, they have all your history.
Yeah.
Everything. Like, imagine if they were in your wallet all the time. Anytime you pay with cash, they knew, or anyone knew. It's not just the government. But still, that's something they didn't like. So we get back to the criminal behavior. There were criminals that used this. It's a tool that can be used for good and bad, and there are bad actors out there. So what happened was actually North Korean hackers called a Lazarus Group. They did a couple of really big hacks, stole millions and millions or billions of dollars worth of crypto, and then sent it through Tornado Cash to obscure where they're keeping it. Or, when you steal like $1 billion, you can't just
automatically gain $1 billion. It's got to be rinsed somehow. Yeah,
everyone's going to know because it's on chain. Like, I can't take this money. It would be basically useless to an honest party or to somebody that would be held to account if they were found in possession of it. So these criminals want to mix it. They want to make it anonymous. They want to detach its origins. So they used it. They funneled a lot of money through it, and because it is unstoppable and they can't turn it off, they blame the developers. So you shouldn't have made this thing at all. So what they did first, before they got to the developers, they actually sanctioned this software. They said any U.S. People are not allowed to interact with this software, this piece of code, this writing, this text. They made it illegal. You would face very, very significant penalties if you interacted with it. Right away, some people, as like an act of rebellion, they used it and sent it to, they would send money through Tornado Cash to all these like well-known people. So they were almost like, they called it dusting. They said, oh, look, now this person was associated with Tornado Cash, and they're like a CEO of a major exchange, or like a public figure, or an actor or something, or a politician. Maybe they send it to, Joe Biden's account. I don't know if he had crypto, but that would certainly be interesting, right? Would they go to jail for using it? I don't know.
Yeah, right. I'm sure they would.
Yeah. So what they actually had to do was that if you then so when this happened, if you wanted to do anything with that money, or just the fact that you had it, you have to self-report it to the OFAC office of the Treasury, U.S. Treasury. Every year, you had to make a report saying, I hold these sanctioned funds, like a bank would have to do, and kind of report that they're there, and you can't really do anything with them. You have to report it every year. It's huge, obligation and liability for something you can control. Somebody sent it to them, like they couldn't refuse it.
Right.
It just shows up. So it's really unprecedented. They've never done that before. They never said you can't use the software. There's open source software that anyone can run. They made it illegal in the U.S. to interact with that, even though there were legitimate uses for the application. It's just because a couple of bad actors used it, and it didn't even affect them. Why are you punishing U.S. people for North Korea stuff?
It's the only people they could touch. They had to make a sign out of somebody, and those are the people that they could touch. So, like from a crypto just has a bad rap. And granted, yes, there have been some like really horrible manifestations of people using this for bad, for sure. Silk Road is a huge example with Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Of course, all the financial that goes on. Watch CoffeeZilla. There's like multiple YouTube pages that really document at a forensic level a lot of the scams that go on in that space. And the same thing with Sam Bankman-Fried. How did this timeline line up with FTX and the collapse of FTX?
Yeah, the timeline's kind of fuzzy. I recall that it was late in the summer of 2022. I don't remember when FTX blew up. I think it was after that.
I think it was. I think you're right. I think it was not as long as I'm thinking it was. I'm going to look it up right now. But
yeah.
The point that I'm making there is, here. When did this collapse? Collapsed in 2022 after massive fraud perpetrated by Bankman-Fried and his partner. So close enough timeline. It doesn't say what month, but I'm sure I can find that in a news article. What month did FTX collapse? November 2022. Okay. So kind of right after end of summer. So the whole point of me saying that here is like there was a lot of negative attention at crypto. Yeah. And that's, again, for as many people who are not using it for criminal behavior, there are always going to be some bad actors, some people out there who are using it for criminal behavior, and that is the stuff that gets sensationalized. And this was all kind of happening around the same time that we were reaching kind of a fever pitch with people's excitement for crypto and also the government's hostility toward crypto. And between this and FTX, it at least became clear to me that the powers that be were really honing in on that. And again, it's yes, we do want to stop bad actors from doing these things and hold people accountable. But one thing that we're not necessarily the best at is holding the right people accountable, right? So why do they go after the developers? Because they were there. Why did they go after any of the people they ended up going after? Because they were easy targets, and the government, they really like a win. That's,
Yeah. So they
go ahead.
They sanction the code. They've never done this before. You can only sanction a person, company, country, or like property owned by people, but never code.
Inanimate code. Yeah.
Yeah. So they started with that. And then 2 days later in the Netherlands, they arrested one of the developers who was living there right away. Just things are escalating a lot because, as I learned later, these guys were cooperating with law enforcement requests, like telling them whatever is all out, like public anyway, right, for the most part, or open source, but kind of like helping them answering their questions. Like, I don't think they had to, right? They're not like obligated to that, but they were engaging law enforcement, and then suddenly people are getting arrested. Like, I don't know. It's really crazy.
Well, and at what point do you sue the Treasury Department?
Oh, right.
Explain how that kind of emerges.
Yeah. So this is bad. Like, I had put money into Tornado Cash. I'd made, I think, 4 deposits. I took one out and thought it was really, really cool. It worked. And this is going to be just like a rainy day thing. Like, oh, what if I need privacy for whatever reason, or just like want to start spending in the real world, like buying groceries or whatever. Like, whenever we get there, I want to like have a fresh account.
You want to know how to do it. Yeah.
Wanted to be ready and be prepared. So I learned how to do that and tried it out a couple times, and then it was sanctioned. And suddenly I could no longer use it. I had money in there. I had, receipts for the cookies, but I couldn't claim them. And I couldn't really do anything with those. I don't think I could trade them. I don't remember what the rules were exactly, but I couldn't do anything about it. And I believe that was pretty up. I didn't do anything wrong, right? But here I'd be punished for just using a tool. So, I did nothing about it right away. It wasn't until this opportunity was presented to me. So how I sued the Treasury, I had a friend that worked at Coinbase, which is one of the US-based exchanges where people can buy and sell crypto. They have a strong vested interest in having sensible regulation and things related to blockchain making sense that didn't make any sense. It actually set a really bad precedent because of what's next. Like, are they going to just start sanctioning everything or sanction the whole blockchain? And Coinbase is very invested in this. So they were wanting to put on a lawsuit, and they were looking for people with damages. And I had damages. I had money in there that I couldn't take out legally or without undue burden. I think they did offer like, oh, if you just, voluntarily put yourself on our list and we'll track you forever, then you can have it. But I was like, I don't want to do that.
No, thanks. Yeah.
Exactly. No, thank you. It kind of defeats the entire purpose of what I'm doing. So when I was speaking with my friend about this, I ended up talking to their lawyers and kind of expressed my claim. And my brother Joe, who lives in Austin. He also was in a similar situation. He was also trying it out, and they really were hoping to have file this in the court of Texas, in a Texas court. I think the reason being that it just seemed favorable for this type of case.
Sure.
So, 6 of us agreed to join this lawsuit as plaintiffs against the Treasury, saying, what you're doing is unconstitutional. You can't do this. And you need to undo it, basically. We had to, sign like an affidavit and kind of express our case, like what our real damages were, what we would do if the sanctions weren't there or were lifted. Now I can, spoiler, we won the lawsuit eventually. Now I can do free transactions. At first let's step back a little bit. I didn't mean to jump so far ahead, but I'm excited because it was a big deal. But it went to the district court, the lower court, I forget which one, in Texas, and we lost that case initially. They said something to the effect of like, you don't have a case here. Like this is the government is right. Paraphrasing that, but I was pretty bummed initially. But then I talked to the lawyers and they said, "Oh well, we always knew we were going to go to the appeals court, whether we won or lost." They believe that, and it makes sense. So they were excited because it wasn't the end of the road. They're kind of like more like a stepping stone. Sure, if they had won there, it would have been better, but it wasn't the end of the road like I thought. So it went to the appeals court, and in November of last year, this is like 2 years later after the sanctions have been on, a full 2 years that nobody could use Tornado Cash in the U.S., we won in the appeals court. The court ruled that it was unconstitutional and that the Treasury needed to reverse the sanctions. So that was a big victory. I found out about that almost a year ago today, because it was the day after Thanksgiving. It was on Black Friday. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just pause there for a second. Very few people sue the federal government. Even less people that sue the federal government win. And I just love how nonchalant you are about it. Like, that's a huge deal. Yeah. I remember talking to you when this was going down, and like, that's serious, dude. When you see your names on those papers, it's serious. It's serious. What was there any bit of hesitation about doing that, or during any of that time where you're like, man, maybe I shouldn't have done that? Or were you so convinced that this is the right side of history that wasn't really a concern? Like, you knew you were going to get it somewhere.
Yeah, I was a little nervous. I was a little nervous that we would lose and there would be some kind of retaliation, or like they would fuck me up somehow. Yeah, and
for sure.
Because I was actually really worried, because what these guys built is an application that anyone can use and no one controls it. And then I kind of built the rails, or helped build the rails that it runs on. So I was like, I'm just like one layer below them,
right,
in this stack of an application. So I was a little nervous. I was like, well, if someone else can go deploy the identical code, or maybe change the name of it and put it somewhere else, then it's just there again and it's serving the same purpose. So I was worried that would, if they're going to go after open source developers for writing open source code and punish them for the actions of other people,
yeah, what's next?
Then what's next, and how does that affect me? Because I built open source software that I don't know who uses it, and I don't know what they do with it. And they can do whatever they want, and it's free, and I don't care. Like, that's for you to do. But it seemed like it could be a liability on me. So it kind of went like both ways. Like, I felt that it was important that this needs to be done. Like, it needs to be undone. This rule, this thing they did, the sanctions. But that if I had lost, then it would be also a risk. Like, there was a risk of doing nothing, and then also a risk of failing, right? But it worked out. So it ended up being fine for me in my life in that point. But then there's the Roman storm trial, which is one of the guys in the Tornado Cash development.
Right. So that is obviously the next spot to hit on for sure. At what point do you become aware that some of this stuff is finally going to trial? Like, was this always on your radar, or was it not really on the radar until it became closer to getting called to testify?
Well, I had been following the case, and I wasn't involved for the longest time, pretty much until the end when they asked me to come out there. But they had been working on this case for like 2 years, maybe. I think he was arrested in the beginning of 2023. So maybe a year and a half they've been working on this criminal case, because he was arrested on 3 very serious charges. Conspiracy to commit money laundering, which has a 20-year sentence. Conspiracy to commit sanctions violations, also 20-year sentence. And then conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business, 5 years. Student
really? Was only 5? That's hilarious, but all right.
45 years he's facing, was facing for the crimes of other people. So, yeah, I was following it again a little bit in the sense of I'm an open source developer, and so is he, and so I'm kind of invested in the outcome of this.
Sure, this is relevant to what I do. Yeah,
to a small degree. I was concerned about it. So I also, really care about this idea, and like the financial privacy I think is really important. I would say I'm a supporter of Tornado Cash and developers, and I was happy to help them in the way that I could with the lawsuit. Glad that worked out. And a couple weeks before Roman's trial, his attorneys reached out and asked if I would talk to them. And the context was about testifying in this trial. So the defense wanted to call me up and ask me questions. I said, okay, well, I'm interested in the same way I've been interested in helping, and I'd love to learn more, because it sounded terrifying at first. So I get on the phone with them, and they basically want me to explain what I know about Tornado Cash and how I learned about it and these kind of things. It was interesting because I wasn't able to, and neither were they. Nobody was allowed to speak about the Treasury lawsuit. I feel like that was relevant, but for whatever reason, the judge refused to hear anything about it. So I couldn't talk about that, which is what I thought they would want me to talk about, or why they were asking me. But the actual fact is that they wanted to hear about the origins of Tornado Cash. I was there. I was at the same event. The government needed to prove intent. This conspiracy aspect is they have to have built this tool with the intention of it being used for criminal behavior.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm making a tool to commit crimes, which is not the case. They were making a privacy solution for anybody. The person buying the groceries is my favorite example, because that could be you, it could be anybody. That's who they were targeting. But they had this picture of one of the developers wearing a shirt at the conference, and it had like a person holding the Ethereum logo, like an Ethereum coin, I guess, and it was stinky. There were like smelly lines coming off of it. And then there was a washing machine with a tornado in the middle, and then on the other side, a clean
Ethereum. Yeah.
Ethereum. And so they their argument was, this is the criminal intent. We got them. Like, look at this T-shirt
they made.
This exhibit number 1, no joke. It was literally exhibit 1. It was this picture of this shirt, and it's just a shirt. It's not legit at all. And the point of the coding competition was they were there to win prizes or win to meet people, to build this thing, to get funding, like to make it a real thing. So it obviously wasn't built for crime. Like why
then also make a T-shirt saying we're committing crimes over here? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Why go to the conference and talk to a million people about what you're doing and build it in the open and make it open source and make it it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I'm not who they have to convince. They have to convince a jury of people who have no idea what we're talking about. They have no idea what a Bitcoin is or a blockchain or any of this shit. They're like, I don't know. I want to go home. That's what they're thinking. So
So
I ended up accepting this opportunity to testify for the defense and talk about how I learned about Tornado Cash, how the conference was, and kind of those kind of things. And then the government had their opportunity to ask me questions, and they pretty much just asked me if I knew what his intent was. And I'm like, I don't know. I never met him before. I never talked to the guy in real life. The only time I interacted with him was on Twitter, kind of just expressing my support. Say, hey, I hope this helps. Like I didn't talk to him before I agreed to do the lawsuit. I think I only talked to him after it was announced or filed or whatever. And I only talked to him maybe twice online. So didn't know the guy. Seems like a nice guy though. But I didn't have any juicy details the government would want to know about him. So maybe that part of the testimony was pretty easy. The whole thing was like 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Like
all that work for such a little show. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I never done anything like that before. I never been in a courtroom. I didn't realize that I'd be waiting around for so long. So I got there when the defense was anticipating that they would then start their side of the trial, because the government goes first, and the government went way longer than they said they would. I was waiting in the hallway for hours and hours with nothing to do. I didn't bring a book. I couldn't use my phone because they take your phone at the security desk.
Yep.
And I just sat in the hallway doing nothing. I couldn't listen to the trial either, so I did nothing. It's incredibly boring. And then there's almost no time left, so I almost had to stay another day. But thankfully, they convinced the judge to keep everybody in their seats for 5 more minutes or 10 more minutes, whatever it was. It went over a little bit so that I had the opportunity to go, because I was there. I had a flight that night. Like, would have been tough, but yeah, I got to do that, and it was a really surreal experience. I'm walking into the room of people, and it's just like the vibe is just so intense. You've been in lots of these courtrooms, right? Nobody's smiling. It's like something happened and everyone's afraid they're in trouble. Like it's just very serious, and it was very strange. So I'm walking to that, and then I'm walking straight up onto the stand, and it's just like a lot to take in. I think when the government came up to question me, he said, "Hello, good morning," and I just like, my brain just didn't work. I didn't say anything, and the judge was like, "Did you hear him?" And I'm like, "Oh yes, hello, hi." It was weird. It was just a lot overload on my brain, but glad I got to do it. It was an interesting experience, and the trial was, I think, 3 weeks long. It was really long, And then the jury was deliberating for several days, like 5 days, I think. And it was starting to get weird. And what I mean by weird is like, I think, they like the headlines that were coming out were like, the jury wants to go home early on Friday because someone wants to get their nails done for their grandma's birthday, or takes her grandma out to get her nails done for her birthday. It's like starting to get these requests, and it's like the fourth day of deliberations. They still can't come to a conclusion. The judge was finally like, no, go back there and decide right now or else. Pretty much telling them like, hey, you need to make a decision, whatever you have, it's time to make the decision. And on that, later that day, they came back and they read their verdict. For the most serious crimes, the conspiracy for sanctions violations and money laundering, they were deadlocked on it. They could not decide guilty or not guilty because they have to be unanimous one way or the other. They could not decide. So those two items were ruled a mistrial. A mistrial in the sense the government could retry those charges. They could drag them through it all over again. And that's 40 years still. They're looming over his head right now. The conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitting business, they convicted him on that one. He was found guilty. The judge did not take him into custody right away. She's deferred that until sentencing, which is sometime in January, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's going to appeals. Like they're not finished fighting the fight there, but that one was the one that made the least amount of sense to me at all, because what is the business? They deployed the software, and the software is just there. Anyone can use it. They're
not making money off of it.
It's like if I told you how to solve this particular puzzle, and then you went around telling other people to solve the puzzle, and now everyone in the world knows how to solve that puzzle, but somehow you're going to blame it on me. I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me. So I'm hopeful that they can get that overturned somehow in the appeals court. I mean, it's very challenging to do, but I think they have a lot of grounds there, because the jury even took 4 or 5 days to get to this. Like there must have been some
usually,
bit of doubt they had.
That's usually what you don't want to hear, is that the jury came right back with their verdict. That means you're going to jail.
Yeah.
But if it takes people that long to decide if you're guilty or not, then the defense at least presented a great argument. It kind of going back, why didn't they want to talk about the Treasury case? Because everyone on that jury would have been like, then why are we here? Why are we here? So, and I think it's also important, again, like, I just love how nonchalant about this, the whole thing you are, but that court is like the Southern District Court is the big federal court. No one gets tried for federal cases and does not have the looming threat of, I might go to jail. The federal court's conviction rate is like 97%. If they are taking you to court, it means you're probably going to jail. That's the same courthouse that the Puff Daddy trial was in. Like this is, in terms of like legal that could happen in America. The Southern District of New York, the Supreme Court of the Southern District of New York has had some of the biggest cases, and cases, which we'll get into here, that set a precedent. Now, yes, this isn't over. There's always an appeal process. This is why there's an appeal process, so you can make a due case about how you were unrepresented or the information was misrepresented. That's why we have an appeals process. So we can only hope that, and again, like those are, it's 50-50. That might, it's an option, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get another chance at a retrial or get just that case dismissed or that charge dismissed. but it's another layer of recourse for you to be like, well, what do we do now? The court system also too is pageantry. There's a lot of pageantry. It is human theater. That's what that is. And yes, factions within the government use it as that. It's not necessarily about sending the right person to jail. It's about sending a person to jail. They get enough evidence on you and they think they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you were guilty to a jury of 12 people. They're going to take that gamble regardless of if you actually did the crime or not, or if they actually do have definitive evidence that proves that you did it. But the odds were stacked against him just going into that courtroom. Like, very few people walk out of that courtroom like, oh, I'm innocent, I beat that case. Fed cases are very, very hard to beat. And again, a lot of the stuff that happens in that court is human pageantry. That's what you're watching, human drama play out. It is the highest level of that type of stuff. So yeah, you walk into that courtroom, everyone does think they're in trouble, because when you're in that courtroom, it ain't good. It's never good. Even the people that work there are like, I don't want to be here. I hate being here. And it's like serious. It's very, very, very serious. Heavy, I guess, is a good word too. So that's just wild that you got to do that. It's wild that you were called as a subject matter expert, and it's pretty epic that you were able to go do that. Very few people will ever get to do that. And especially in a case like this that does have repercussions that go well beyond just crypto. You fought the fight of free speech, and they didn't win this round. It doesn't mean the fight's over, but you can say that you were a part of. Ultimately, that's going to be the free speech of the future. Code. Is code illegal? Does code have intent? I don't know. That's where this gets kind of scary. But before we get into the more ethereal aspects of that, I want to make sure we hit on to Alexei Pertsev's conviction. So how does that fit into this story?
Yeah, Alexei is another developer. There's a third guy, Roman Simonov. He lives in Russia. And as far as I know, he hasn't been accused of any crimes there yet. I'm sure he doesn't live comfortably knowing that his peers, his colleagues, are facing this criminal charges. But Alexei, he was arrested right away, and at first folks didn't know why. Like, his wife didn't know why. Like, they really wouldn't tell him what the charges were for several months, I think.
Jeez.
Ultimately, he was in pretrial detention. He was denied bail. He was in there for 8 months before his trial. He had a 2-day trial, 2 days, and they found him guilty of money laundering. Sentenced him to 5 years and 4 months.
And was this was in America?
No, this is in the Netherlands.
Oh, God, that's where he got arrested. Gotcha. Yeah.
That's where he lives.
Gotcha.
And it's really strange because the timing, like right after the sanctions were put on, it's like then the Dutch authorities arrested him and didn't really tell him why. And it just, I don't know, it's further this like scary thing that, because they wrote this open source tool and it could be used for bad, that means they're liable for that.
Well, yeah, I don't know the subtleties. I'm a little more familiar with the subtleties of American legal processes, and I'm not, and at least the way free speech works here, I'm not necessarily totally aware of how it works. I don't know if what I'm saying is I don't know if he would have had the same legal standing for defense that Roman had in America, because I just don't know how they do stuff over there. But I do know that America, like the free speech thing, Americans who haven't left this country think that every place has that, and they don't. It's unique to here, and it's very fragile. It's constantly being tested, even since the beginning. And that's why this is scary. Because, like, this is a case that would be used as precedent. And future rulings that relate to this tangentially, they will refer back to this and be like, well, this court found him guilty, so whatever, we're going to have to side with them because they decided that this was unlawful behavior, when in reality, it's just code. Does code have intent? Does code that nobody manages, can you ascribe the intent of the person that made it onto the code that is not sentient? You know, then we can easily get into like this weird AI territory where it's like, well, are we looking at code as alive now? Is that are they imbued with the same rights or protections that we as humans would be? You know, I don't know. But if you could kind of give your perspective of why this is dangerous, why this is scary beyond just crypto. Let's talk about why it's bad for crypto as a whole, but then kind of expand as to how what the ripple effect from this could be.
Yeah, you're right. In the U.S., we have the First Amendment. You have the right to say whatever you want, right? You can write down whatever you want. You can say whatever you want. And it's already established that writing software code is free speech. You can do that. They can't go banning books. They can't go banning free speech. They can't do that. It was established in the 90s when there was a guy who was fighting for the rights to publish an encryption algorithm. You know, that's it. Like, just having encryption was illegal. They said you can't encrypt things. That's what do they call it? It was under like a weapons export law or something like that. You couldn't export it because it's like military grade, you know, similar
Technology,
to like, similar to like shipping military weapons. So you can't.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, right. So people would even like print it on a T-shirt and say, you know, this T-shirt is illegal, and because they had the software written on it. It's just ridiculous. You know, you can't do that. That's this in the U.S. You have freedom of speech and code is speech. And how does it affect us beyond blockchain? Well, more and more we're using encryption every day. Right now, you listening or watching this show, you're using encryption to connect to the service you're connected to, the YouTube or Spotify or whatever. That connection is encrypted using HTTPS, the SSL. That's encrypted. Now people are using more encrypted chats like Signal and even WhatsApp.
And yeah,
people have the right to privacy and they want to have it. And the thing about it is that it's, I think as you said, it's constantly eroded every day. And if you don't fight to have privacy, then you're just going to lose it over time, right? You can't just say, and don't ever say, I don't have anything to hide, so you can go ahead and look, you know, like,
right.
You wouldn't say that. Like, you just don't, there's no need to show the whole world the intimate details of your life. And like online financial privacy is really important. Chatting is important. Having privacy there, you know, in the privacy of your home, all these things are really important. So, that's, you know, why I was so compelled to, or so feel so strongly about this online privacy stuff. You know, it could really be affecting the way that we operate in the world.
Well, I mean, and we're, again, like our generation was really kind of the experiment in so many ways. But we're the first generation that's really we've felt it basically our whole life, the erosion of what freedom and privacy used to be. We're watching that kind of dissolve much faster than any other generation did. And, you know, like, we're partly to blame. People are partly to blame for it. We all want to complain about Facebook or whatever company stealing our data. We signed the papers. We said, okay, you can use our data however you want. So like there's an element of this where the government wants the information, but the way that they're selling it to us is a way that they won't have to search for it. We'll just give it to them, right? And also, this is something that people should be aware of if they're not already. If the government wants it, they will access it. Doesn't matter if it's WhatsApp encryption, doesn't matter if it's this hash algorithm or that hash. If they want that information, they will get it. Now, the question is, can they bring that information into a courtroom if they acquired it illegally? And there's a ton of instances over the past 10 years where the government will do something just like this. They'll see an emergent technology that bypasses some kind of omnipresence that the government is looking for, and they'll start hitting it with sanctions, and they'll start trying to pass laws that say it's illegal to use this, it's illegal to use that. But then once they crack it, they don't really care. They'll still try and pass the laws because it's stuff that they can catch you on. The example that's coming to mind, just because I remember this playing out, there was a terrorist shooting in California somewhere, and they picked up iPhones, and the government said, Apple, please give us a backdoor. And Apple was like, no, we're not going to do that. That violates the entire premise of our corporate ideology. And then a couple weeks later, the government was like, well, it doesn't matter. We already cracked it. We can get that information anyways, but we're still going to pursue laws that make it mandatory for companies like you to provide us with these backdoors. This is the reality that we're living in, folks. And it's like, if they can't get us to sign, okay, I consent to this, they will just brute force it. And I'm of the same opinion as you. If I'm not doing anything, then I have nothing to worry about. But you, how about that? If you want to see my, you're going to have to give me some legal paperwork saying I am legally required to do that, because it's my privacy. I don't have to prove to you that I'm not committing a crime. You have to prove that I am committing a crime. So, this is going to be something that we're going to deal with in so many different ways, at least through the course of our lifetime. And I don't know, it's just cool that you've been a part of what resistance we have. Like, what little bit of the actual tangible authority that we have to like stop this kind of behavior. It's suing the government. It's helping the court cases that are for sure going to be used as some kind of precedent in the future. Ultimately, the government wants to know everything that you're doing, and it's sold to us as security. But at a certain point, it's just, they want omnipresence. They want to know everything you're doing, and it's going to get used against you. And right now it gets used against us in subtle ways. Like we get sold ads from targeted advertising. That's what it is now. But at what point does it start to encroach on every other aspect of your life? And even that, I did an episode with this other great podcast called the Swerve Podcast. We did it on In-Q-Tel. Do you know about In-Q-Tel at all? Have we ever talked about In-Q-Tel? Long story short, In-Q-Tel was a bridge between the CIA and it is a venture capitalist firm, and it was a bridge between Silicon Valley and the military. The military was looking for innovative code to invest in to fulfill this agenda that they had, and the agenda was, I'm not even joking, the agenda was behavior modification and complete information awareness. Okay. And some of the code that In-Q-Tel invested in is what became Google Earth. Google Earth is CIA grade surveillance technology. Targeted ads, the code for targeted ads. In-Q-Tel invested in that. And every time you get a targeted ad, that's CIA grade, information gathering software. It's nuts. But I guess this, getting a little off topic, but kind of like folding it back in here, this is why this stuff is dangerous. As we see maybe this administration's a little bit different about it. They're a little more lawless when it comes to crypto. Biden hated crypto. That was pretty clear. This administration, not so much. But, also, I don't know if I wouldn't trust either groups of people to be making legislation. One's going to use it for their own benefit and the other one is going to use it for their own benefit, but for a different way. So I don't know. Where does this leave us? You're a person who spent your professional life, pursuing cybersecurity. What are the things that alarm you the most beyond, of course, this court case? But like, what are the things that kind of alarm you the most about the erosion of our privacy and the ever encroaching hand of the government telling us how to live?
Well, I mean, you named off a lot of things that are very scary already. The amount of information about us is higher than it's ever been. We're walking around with tracking devices in our pockets all the time. And if you have a smartwatch, they got your bio data, Yeah. There are so many things they could do with all this metadata. And now with the rise of license plate readers, I don't know if you're seeing them.
They're all over New York. They just put like $500 million into some infrastructure for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is crazy. They'll read your bumper stickers and see if they're political or not. And of course, they're going to be selling that data. They're going to do who knows what, talking about targeted ads, like all that, like where I went to the store is going to be target, like the color of my car, like anything they can use is going to be tracking you. And so with the new technology coming through where they can do all kinds of stuff, your privacy is getting eroded every day. So you desperately need to hold on to whatever you can, at whatever privacy you can, and keep it and fight for it and stay as private as you can. It's your right. It's just, there's due process and, you're not trying to hide anything. Like, you're just trying to live your life and not be constantly monitored and constantly surveilled all the time. It's a lot to deal with. And so, I think, why am I working on this technology? Well, it's just the word I started with, and one of the words I started with is freedom. This, to be a private citizen, is to be free, to have the freedom to do what you want without being surveilled, without having to reveal that information all the time. Be able to do things you want to do. In the U.S., a lot of financial laws are really weird. They have laws saying like you can't invest in these types of assets if you're not rich enough. And it's like, who is that benefiting? I think that keeps out the small retail people. They're not allowed to access the things that rich people are doing to get really, really rich. And, those laws, maybe they were created in a good spirit of like trying to protect people, but it's a little strange to have people saying like, oh, you're not allowed to do this thing with your own money. Like, blockchain can come in and say, you can create that new thing. You can create whatever you want. You don't have to ask for permission. Of course, there will always be laws, right? But to have the technical capability to do that, I think that's real freedom.
Do you think now, like maybe 20 years ago, this was total fringe? Like I was a real every time I brought this up. But do you think this ultimately culminates in chips? Like you bring up a good point. We're already electing to carry essentially that externalized from our body. We elect to carry that every day. Do you think this is where this goes? Is like there's a chip in your hand and that is your access to everything? Or even this isn't necessarily related to getting a chip, but like the social credit score. Like, because in my mind, I look at this, why do they want this omnipresence? And it's so that they can cut us off. or they can control our behavior without having to send people to control our behavior, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. This is crazy.
It is weird, there's a lot of stuff that, when we were talking a long time ago, it was more fringe, but now it's becoming like scarily tangible, and it's like not even really that far off. I can already see the writing on the wall for a lot of this stuff, you know?
But the chip is, I feel like, already here. Like if people wearing Apple Watch, I have like a Garmin watch, right? And like they know you could track this watch has an identifier and it's broadcasting signals all over everywhere I go. You could monitor that. And then if you had access to the database, you could look at my health data and like everything you could ever want to know about me is somewhere on digitized somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's just, we're already there, I'd say. We have the chip. It's just all around us. It's not going to be implanted in your skin. It's going to be in the room with you, in your pocket. It's going to be so within 3 feet of you at any time. That's the chip that from your vision from 20 years ago. That's happening right now. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, it again is super real. And like with the way we've elected to integrate this technology with our lives now, I don't see a scenario where people are opposed to it. I mean, even with getting like chips, that's already a thing. Like with very hyper wealthy folks, they'll get chips installed, and it's like a way for them to get into certain places. Not that the chip is like RFID, but it's like how they pay for stuff. In fact, it was like a problem in Mexico where people were being abducted. People get abducted all the time in Mexico for, ransom. But they would abduct these people with the chips and they just chop off their hand and dump them.
Oh my God.
Because they got the chip. They don't need anything else. They got the chip. There's also a funny anecdote about the fitness watches. There was like this really big scandal in the military where a bunch of very secret facilities got outed because the people that were working there were wearing their fitness watches and running around the perimeter. And it's like areas that like normal people, you're not going there. Like you're there for specifically because you're related to the military. But even so, like hackers found their Facebook profile and then were able to find the app that they used on their smart, and like their was just logged on there. And it reveals that, I get why we have to sacrifice some freedom for security. I get it, especially in the modern world. But I definitely do not see the need for the government to have every single bit of information on me or access to that. But yeah, we're there already. Like people, a thing that always pisses me off is like, even today, people will be like, you think the government's listening on your phone calls? It's like, yeah, Edward Snowden proved that 10 years ago. And there's this hilarious building right down by that court, actually. It's an old AT&T building, but it's like a node, huge building, no windows. It can take a direct nuclear blast. The people inside can live for 30 days if a nuke hit New York City. And in that building is the supposed location for the NSA data siphoning point called Titan Point. And it was like, this was outed in the Snowden stuff, but it's like all the data coming into New York from overseas, all the microwave communications in New York, it all passes through this one building. And there was a room that was just cloning all of that data directly to the NSA. So we are there. And I guess to your point, like this is why we have to kick and scream about everything. Otherwise, they're just going to come in and sweep it away. And in most cases, we won't even fight. We'll be like, yeah, You want my data? Sure. I can post on Facebook for free. All I have to give you is my data? Sure. So I don't know, man. It's very strange times. Super strange times. Well, I guess to end this on a cheerier note, what are your positive outlooks for crypto? What are your positive outlooks for privacy? Who are the people, what are the projects you see that give you hope that there's still people that are trying to make sure we can retain some freedom?
Well, we've got Roman Storm and, the Tornado Cash guys still fighting this fight. They're doing amazing work. There are a lot of people that have, when entities have donated to their legal fight. That's really been refreshing to see. There's big movements in having native support for zero knowledge technology on Ethereum. There will be a day where you don't have to broadcast everything you do to use the blockchain. It can be still that same immutable, trustless environment where you know exactly how it's going to behave and you're not revealing everything to everybody. That's coming soon. It's going to be fast. It's going to be cheap. And it's all through some really, really fancy math that we're going to reclaim some of that privacy and freedoms to do these things you want to do on the internet. Have real, cash is king, right? Hard, cold cash that you could go and buy with it. It's there. If we can have that in a digital form and have it be very similar to or better, there's a lot of trade-offs of making cash. Those are all serialized and could be tracked. Where if you have the zero knowledge stuff, you can really, really have financial privacy online, maybe for the first time. So I'm really, really excited for that. If you're a listener who's not convinced on crypto, that's okay. I think what the real world's going to be is you'll be using it one day and not really notice or care. Yeah. What is the technology that powers a Visa card? You don't give a shit. You don't even know what it is. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, sure. It works. That's what
works. You know that when you tap it or swipe it or stick the chip in there, it's taking money out of your account. You're getting the goods you wanted in a few moments, right? We'll get there with crypto. It's going to be the rails back there. So I really believe in it. I think it's really a really smart idea. And it's something that people are really starting to pay attention to. If you think it's a good investment, that's something to think about. At the end of the day, you're going to be probably using it as dollars. You're probably not going to be buying crypto as you think about it. I still think crypto is a good purchase, but the matter of fact is that we want dollars or the fiat currency you're used to. It's not going to be going up and down, but has all the properties that you want. We're going to get there.
Well, I love that. I have loved watching your story develop, especially all the stuff with this. This was just on top of the other craziness that you went through, helping scale Ethereum, to have this kind of as something that was just a side quest is just hilarious. And again, it's you're easily one of the smartest people that I've ever met in my entire life. And I appreciate your opinions. And most of the time when people get on the tirade about why they hate crypto, I bring you up. I'm these are real people. These are real people who actually give more about you and your financial independence than you do. You just don't know it yet. So I'll be super excited to see what other crazy shenanigans you get into. And, thank you for fighting the good fight.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, and thanks so much for having me on the show again. It's really been fun.
Always a pleasure. Thank you, Preston Van Loon. I'll have links to Preston's socials in the description below. If you want to like and support what he does, please check those out. This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe, please. And we'll catch you on the next one. See you guys.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. with your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva.
That's obnoxious.
Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva.
Literally no one cares.
For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod.
When will this end?
Thank you for listening. Now get back to work.
Move it along, buddy.